Okay, so we can start. So welcome to the panel called Healthy Data. So you may know, you may sense from the title of this panel that we're gonna be talking about data, and specifically data in healthcare. So let me again welcome our two excellent panelists. Jennifer Pugne, who is a Global Data Policy Strategy Lead at Roche. So welcome, Jennifer. And Tapani Piha, who is from Sitra Finnish Innovation Fund. Welcome. So healthcare and the data was a topic of previous discussions during today, or even yesterday. So it's a big topic for Slovakia. That's why I'm really glad that I can welcome two international experts. So hopefully they will be able to share their knowledge and experience. So we're gonna mostly talk about the European health data space, and we may see this initiative as a pivotal moment in Europe, an opportunity to unlock the power of health data to transform how diseases are identified, treated, or even prevented, to enhance data-driven decision-making and to make health systems more sustainable, not only because the systems themselves, but also because of the health of Europe's citizens. So without further introductory remarks, I would start with my first questions for both of you. So maybe a more general question. What is European health data space and why is it important? Jennifer.
Is this on? Yeah?
It's on.
Okay, there we go. I think one thing that sets the European health data space apart is how it started through the European strategy for data being horizontally across sectors and looking at the broader vision for Europe and putting forward the ambition to establish Europe as a leader in the data economy, recognizing that the only way we're going to figure out how to navigate this space is together. And I think that's extremely important and a big differentiator, and why a lot of the world is watching what happens with this. And as we've seen, there's several common data spaces put forward in that strategy, and the European health data space has the privilege of being the first of those common data spaces to be established. I think what's really exciting about that is it offers a lot of opportunity because it will set the foundation and the direction for the common data spaces that follow. But it also is something that's going to be a challenge for us. And I think COVID really highlighted the necessity of facing that challenge. So I think that's really part of, what makes it unique, where it's going. And then, I don't know, do you want to speak maybe more to EHDS itself?
Thank you. The European health data space is the biggest and most ambitious proposal from the European Commission in the health policy since 2010. So it will be taking forward health policy in the European Union in a big way. And of course, it is something which is enormously important for all the patients, industries, and countries, because it will create a basis how we can better use data in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, you wanted to add something? I
was going to say, sort of to that end, why I think for Roche, why we believe it to be so important, and to industry. I think a big part of it is that it's really important across the full continuum of care. So it impacts our ability to deliver better patient outcomes, as Tapani just spoke to. But that also then serves as fuel to actually support an innovation ecosystem, which is something that's very important to, not just Europe, but within the member states, so that we can continue to improve and iterate on how we're delivering services to patients, and as a group or as a part of an innovator, really figure out how can we optimize and deliver that. And one of our overall ambitions is to do that at less overall cost to society. And the only way is together, and with that data, fueling it in an infinite sort of cycle.
And indeed, during the COVID crisis, the member states came together and they found a kind of unanimity to tackle the crisis. And of course, the proposal for the European health data space partly emerged from that crisis. Now, the proposal from the Commission, the regulation is a kind of a litmus test, whether this unity and determination that the member states showed continues.
And from the practical point of view, is it happening? Is this unanimity from the COVID times where the reaction was joined and coordinated? Are we experiencing something similar in building a joint common European data space?
I think that all the member states really have been highly supportive. But of course, the devil is always in the details. When we get into the nitty-gritty of the legislation, then the question is, should we write this article this way or that way? And I think, of course, also the political situation is now evolving, because it's not only the member states in the Council of the European Union, but it's also the Parliament who is starting to look at this one. And it will be a long process. It won't be happening overnight, but in the most optimistic scenarios, the political process will be ending by the end of this year, but most probably by next summer. And then I think that if that happens, then we can say that it was a success.
Mm-hmm. There's this initiative for joint action called EHDS towards the European health data space, which is helping EU member states, European Commission to develop and promote concepts also for not only for primary use of data, but also for secondary use of data for the benefit of public health, innovation, and research. Tapani, why this project, and I know that you know a lot about it, why this project has been created?
Joint actions are collaborative efforts by the member states, supported and in collaboration with the European Commission. And the joint action TEHDAS towards the European health data space, that was created in 2020 in anticipation of the proposal from the Commission. 25 countries from Europe decided to join this joint action, including 4 non-member state countries. And every country was offered a possibility to join, but each and every country needs to decide, depending on their interest and their resources, whether they can come into this action. It started in February 2020, and it will be finishing next summer, so it's only a roughly 2-year project. And the idea of the joint action was that, first of all, it was preparing for this proposal, and the proposal for the regulation was made last May. Now we are, in a sense, looking at how can we, in this situation that the proposal is out, we can further help the member states and the Commission in doing this proposal in practice. One of the important things for the joint actions was that when the member states are coming together, they are conveying the messages that what is possible and for member states and what the member states want to the Commission, so the Commission can take into account these wishes in advance. At the same time, it helps that the member states are coming together to prepare themselves for this proposal.
I would actually add too, something that Tapani is probably being a little bit modest about, is the efforts that TEHDAS has gone to include broader stakeholder groups. So ourselves and other organizations that are working to participate in the EHDS have had the opportunity to contribute to that as well. And it's very important to have all those voices, because we are going to have to work together to do it. So it's very exciting to see the progress that TEHDAS work has been made.
Thank you for taking that up, because it's, of course, it's only about it's not only about member states and the Council and the Parliament and the Commission. It's also very much about the stakeholders, and therefore we have set up several ways of consulting stakeholders. We have a stakeholder forum which is meeting twice a year. We have several advisory bodies. We have a project forum where we are actually consulting all the other project working in this area, because of course this is a little bit like a big puzzle. We need to put all the pieces together so that they fit.
Just for those of you who are sitting here in the room, we also have Slido active, so please feel free, if you have questions, put them in Slido and we'll bring them up shortly. in Slovakia, and I will try to do the link also to what we are discussing here and what's the discourse on the national level here in Slovakia. When we talk about healthcare data, the question of their security and protection of personal rights and GDPR always comes up. So how do you see it? How to correctly approach this question of data protection in all of this, because that should be an important part of this effort. Jennifer.
So I would put forward data privacy regulation, if done properly, actually should liberate data. It should enable the flow of it. It's really about ensuring that individuals have the ability and rights to exercise autonomy over that data. And then the other element, of course, then being that when that data is being used, the appropriate protections are in place. So I think one of the elements that's really important is then data governance. And the EHDS regulation does go to great lengths to look at what does that need to look like specific to health data. And I think what's really important that we've noticed globally in a lot of different data projects with different groups of stakeholders has been the view that this is a really technical topic, but it actually demands non-technical leaders to engage in that conversation. And I think the fact that we have the European health data space starting to establish those bodies, both at the European level and then at the member state level, they will be key in making sure that we can build that transparency and trust with all the partners around the table and those data subjects that are contributing. You're dependent on them contributing their data to participate in this work so that we can really realize value and deliver innovation to in turn deliver better services to the citizens in our member states in Europe.
And this question was discussed just on Tuesday when there was a Digital Europe had a webinar, and the European Data Protection Supervisor's Office was saying exactly the same as you say, Jennifer, that the GDPR is there to stay, and it should streamline and help in making data available. But there are, in a sense, two aspects which I would like to raise here. One is that when we are using data, we need to put in place the safeguards so that we are using data in a proper way. And the European Data Protection Supervisor mentioned, for example, minimization and anonymization and other that kind of technical tools. And the second thing, which is equally important, is the interpretation done at the country level or at the local level. And there we have had problems because the different national authorities, they have been widely differing interpretations. And what we would like to see with this European Health Data Space project, that these interpretations are getting closer to each other.
So there probably should be some active involvement of all member states, all key stakeholders from the member states, and also working on this, because the interpretation of what can be shared, in what form, and how to do it, it's quite often a point where we get stuck. I'm not sure about other countries, but in Slovakia, that's something what we face and deal with seriously. So on the practical note, what should happen to consider a country an EHDS ready country? Tapani.
Thank you. First, I would like to say that this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. So I don't think that there's any one thing you need to do in order to be ready for the European Health Data Space. I think that at the end of the day, fulfilling the regulations letter, like nomination the authorities, that's easy piece, the easy part. What is the most difficult part for the countries is to really set up the data system so that they function, so that that within the framework given by the regulation, there is data available from the countries. And that is something which will take a long time before the hospital systems, for the other data sources in countries are in such a shape that they can be used. I see there's a question about the role of the national statistical offices. And of course, the national statistical offices, they will be an important source of data. And they will be, in a sense, feeding that data into the machinery. So, but I think that of course, what is important is that the member states do their homework. They need to put the legislation in order so that the national implementation of the regulation is in place, but they also need to work on the practices, how the data is collected, how it's made available, how the technologies are done. But one of the things is, of course, I can comfort you that all countries are in the same boat, because this is a situation post-GDPR. And some countries had a long tradition in data collection and data use. So, for example, the Nordic countries, Denmark and Sweden, for example, they had collected data for a long time, registries and others, and made that available. But of course, they are also in a new situation. How to handle that situation now in this new legal and political environment? And some other countries, they are just starting. But there are countries who are making investment in running fast. And one of the good examples of that is France. They actually made a program of 630 million euros to increase and improve e-health and data management in the whole country. And so they, in a sense, decided that, okay, now we go. Another example where I know that the preparations are in full swing is Latvia. So many countries are showing that it can be done.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, maybe from your experience, Roche is a global company. From the environments, different environments, are there some examples worth mentioning from the experience you have as Roche, where working with on the national level is something which could be taken as an example?
I don't know if I have any global examples for that, but what keeps ringing through the different conversations is the opportunity that a lot of this presents to learn from each other. And I think, as called out earlier with France, that's also a really great place to look to for an example of how they work with personal data, because they actually they've come at it that they don't believe anything can be anonymized. In the future, that might very well be true. So how do we manage to establish those infrastructures and that data governance to navigate that space and still generate value for everyone involved without putting anyone at risk or doing any harm? And I think that's really a significant opportunity here, is that there's all these countries, regardless of where they are, they have lessons learned to contribute. And as we were talking about yesterday even, what it took Finland to do, we've seen some countries do in a year or two. What we've seen some of the countries do over decades, we've seen accelerated into other small bits, and those are really valuable things that we can pull out from each other. So I think the European health data space, if we can really come together as member states, that's a significant opportunity. Because like Tapani said, globally, no one really has any of this holistically figured out. We all have different pieces of it, and they're all context dependent. So, this opportunity, approaching it from this way, is significant.
Mm-hmm. So when we were talking about the data policy, and we all quite often look up north to Finland, to what you do in Finland. So maybe if you could elaborate a bit more, and we have slightly more than two minutes, like why Finland is on the right track. Is Finland on the right track?
Thank you. I think that Finland is definitely on the right track. And in Finland, we are one of those countries where we had a long tradition of using registries for research. So epidemiological research in Finland has been at a high level since the 70s, 60s and 70s. But we were also in the new situation as everybody with the GDPR and the new attitude towards data protection. And therefore, Finnish government decided to do the pioneering law on secondary use of health data. And actually, that was a little bit used as a model in this European proposal. So in a sense, and we set up this FinData, which is this health data access body. It has been a model for that in the regulation. But we, of course, when we started, we were the first ones to start. We also got our fair share of problems. And I think that it has been also for us a learning process, that what needs to be done so that the process is smooth and it works as intended. And we are still working on that. It is by no means it's yet over. The FinData is now 3 years old, and I'm expecting that it will take 2 more years before it's fully functional. But this only underlines what I said, that it's a marathon. And then I would like to come, Jennifer, back to what you said about learning from each other. Joint Action Tehdas has been this kind of experience. We have been learning each other. And my plea for the European Commission is that the European Commission continues enabling member states and stakeholders to come together and to learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Few seconds left, so maybe we take the question from Saido on standards on data and how the interoperability is going to be ensured.
Well, they do have some content in the European health data space regulation that's intended to help set the direction and enable ease of entry for vendors in this space. The one that comes immediately to mind is the Act, the Interoperable Europe Act that was just released this last week. And I believe it's horizontal, but I haven't done much with it yet. And I feel like that's going to be one of the significant things. And I think a big part of where my comments earlier around the horizontal piece that's really significant is that it's not just within healthcare, and this is a big learning from Finland, it's across sectors, because if we want to move towards more personalized healthcare models of care, we need to actually have that social determinants data from other sectors informing those different pieces, and that's where we can really level up and have those robust outputs. So, do you know much about the Interoperable Europe plan yet?
Yeah, I think that, of course, that the standardization is a long process and it has many facets. The international standardization organizations, they continue to play a crucial role. But, of course, the European health data space and its administrative bodies will have a possibility of speeding up things and making things happen. And then, of course, standardization means also other things than standards themselves. So it means rules and practices which are put in place. And there I think that the cooperation within this European health data space will be crucial, so that over the years we will be seeing from the cooperation emerging practices, data models, others, which don't take a form of a standard, but actually are guiding the countries then to go ahead. Mm-hmm.
We're now definitely out of our time for this panel discussion, but you're welcome to stay here and also to follow what the Slovak experts have to say, and even chip in if you would feel there is something interesting to comment on. And for those of you who are sitting in the room and would like to maybe continue informally with Tapani and Jennifer, after this panel there will be informal discussion in the VIP lounge, so you are invited to join this. And thank you very much, Jennifer Pugne-Roche, Tapani Piha, Sitra Finnish Innovation Fund. Thank you very much.